Hey guys, this is part 2 of HB 113 and my video response to one of the sponsors for House Bill HB 113, which is the Parental Rights Bill. This one might take a little longer, so I'm going to have to fly. Basically, Idaho Code 32-1013, interference with fundamental parental rights, restricted, has a couple of key words in here that neither the state of Idaho nor any political subdivision thereof may violate the parent's fundamental and established rights protected by this act. Well, I mean, this is a little redundant because no political subdivision that I know ever had the authority to do it in the first place. Basically, and any restriction, therefore, in the such rights shall be not upheld unless it demonstrates by clear and convincing, arbitrary term, and not defined evidence that the restriction or interference of both, A, is essential to further a compelling government interest. Compelling government interest. You mean like forcing vaccinations, forcing socialized medicine, forcing nationalized education, you know, submitting to totalitarian power and trying to spend tax dollars to fight cases that they didn't need to spend? You mean that kind? You know, this compelling government interest is ridiculous. Most of us know that the interest of the state, or the interest of the state should have been to be able to protect the life, liberty, and property of people. Instead, that we feel that we have to spend tax dollars in the state legislatures to be able to write laws, to be able to do something that all we needed to do is enforce without spending that money. I mean, writing these bills and hashing these bills and all of this is garbage. You can't legislate somebody to believe this. This is the problem that I'm having here. It's like with the Con bill and some of these other bills. We're going to go ahead and put these words down on paper, and it's really going to force the government to be able to adhere to these provisions. No, it isn't. I mean, think about this for a second, and I've mentioned this before in other videos. Who enforces the laws for the legislature? Law enforcement, right? Right or wrong, that's a different argument. Why though? Because the words won't enforce themselves. So we're going to have a constitutional convention. We're going to add words to that constitution, and somehow Congress is going to go, oh, whoa, those words are just gnarly. We can't do that. Well, this is the same way. So what we're doing is we're basically taking one of these fundamental principles that made America what it is, and we have to try to codify them to be able to say, see, these are really what our rights are. Big problem, okay? When we start enumerating our rights as citizens, all of a sudden the government can do what it wants to and say, well, you didn't enumerate that right. That was what our founders had worried about with the Bill of Rights. And actually the Supreme Court many years ago, the thing that we adhere to now as the supreme authoritarian power, they basically created this Bill of Rights doctrine. And basically what it did is it flipped the whole entire purpose of the Bill of Rights as a protection that the Anti-Federalists saw necessary to protect the ambiguity of the Constitution. Well, what did the Supreme Court do? Oh, yeah. And here, you know, they basically said, oh, what we're going to do is we're going to go ahead and say, well, your rights come from the 14th Amendment, and that's what grants you your Second and your First Amendment and all of those things. And they get to determine what your rights are. So the Bill of Rights happens to be a laundry list of what rights we have left. And they are left to the federal government to be able to determine what they are. And the reason why that is because the states won't get involved in fighting it, or they don't understand jurisdiction. They don't understand the few and defined powers. They think that the federal Constitution not only is below the Supreme Court, but they believe that it can be changed for light and transient reasons by anybody that feels like they want to change it. I mean, how do we expect to be able to sit here and talk about unalienable rights and the Constitution and all that when nobody even cares? Nobody cares. At least in our government, they don't. They're trying to piecemeal this and throw us a few scraps and say, oh, well, you know, you can carry your gun, you know, on Tuesday from 1 to 2:30, but you can't do it anywhere else. No, that's not how it works. I can go into guns later, but you guys probably know all that. So basically here it goes, and this might be a two-parter too, so I'm sorry. The amended House bill. The question in every civilized culture has been, whose job is it to raise and to educate the children? I don't think that's true. It's ridiculous to be able to think that this was a question. It was a question by government on how they could strip those rights from the parents to be able to control them, and the rest of the world does. These socialist collectivist nations are the ones that have taken control of the parents through incrementalization, just like this. It says they have both the responsibility and the right to be able to direct an upbringing of the child. The problem with this is the fact that they make it like they're going to be handing us these scraps. You know, this is all about what kind of limitations that are placed on us. The whole problem with this is this thing needs to be written on how it restricts government. Period. It preserves our rights, inviolate, boundless, and it limits the power of government. So it says, so basically what I wrote in there was accept what is in conflict with the state and federal law or policy created by any political subdivision. So this is really an empty bill. And then it says, beginning in the 1920s, the Supreme Court adopted the same view. In fact, they declared the right to direct the upbringing of the child was actually a fundamental constitutional right. Actually? Really? And you know what? Furthermore, the Supreme Court didn't adopt the same view in 1920. They weren't stupid like they are now. These people, you're acting like we're throwing this piecemeal garbage out at us. Our rights were unalienable from God. Governments were created to protect those rights. They didn't need to write them down on a piece of paper and say, well, just in case anybody decides to change your mind, this is what they are. Our rights are the universe, okay? That's what, our rights are the universe. I mean, you could think maybe it's a poor analogy. I'm challenged that way. And the restrictions are the government, the planet, let's say, right? So the limitations are all about right here on this planet, and we got everything else. Well, now government feels like they're way out here. They've got all this boundless authority, and we are right here. Or another analogy is the box theory, right? So back when the government was created, we had the government in the box, had high walls, and the people guarded it, right? We didn't let the government jump out of the box. Well, today, you know what's really weird? Somehow they still claim the Constitution, but now government is on the outside of the box, and the people are on the inside of the box. This is the mentality that we have today, and this is the problem I have with this bill. And I'm not even sure I could explain that on paper, which is why I did a video. And it looks like I'm going to have to go into another one. Adopted the same view is ridiculous. When the court says that it was a fundamental right, it places that right along fundamental rights such as freedom of speech, freedom of religion, and freedom of association. Here we have again, government is putting our rights into a box. Okay? And this is an effort, I don't know if it's intentional or not, to be able to say that, oh, if our rights eventually are not fully defined, then we're not entitled to them. And this is completely dangerous. I can't support this. There's no part of this I can support. Rights are not placed. They're boundless. Government is to be placed. Its limitations are supposed to be placed. Their power and authority are to be placed in the box. So, we're going to continue on a little bit. So can the state interfere with the person's fundamental rights? Yes, it can. But only when there's a strong reason. Now this is the verbiage in the bill, I guess. Strong reason? Is that not an ambiguous term? Boundless authority to government to be able to determine what strong reason is, only to be changed by the Marxists, socialists, communists along the way? Anyway, I'll cover it in a different video. That'll be video 3. And thanks, you guys. Bye.